What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted to Combat, back for another week of Best Bets and Props, where I go over all of my betting action for this weekend's UFC card, which is UFC Vegas 78. We have Vicente Luque versus Rafael dos Anjos at 170, and we have 13 fights on this card as it stands right now. Some pretty fun matchups, some matchups that I find to be very binary as far as a person has to win in the early rounds of the fight or they go on to lose. Specific methods of victory I see fitting one fighter. And we have some pretty low-level competition here taking on, slightly more promising competition, right? Some fighters on big losing streaks that are kind of back against the wall in the league right now. But all things considered, pretty fun fight card. I have 4 money lines in this card, and I have, I believe, 2 props as well. So we'll go over all of that. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, and for all details on the fight card, all 13 fights, all 26 fighters, you can refer to the live stream I did last night with the great Cody from Blood Money MMA Bets. Went over all of the fights in great detail. It was a pretty fun time. So we can kick this one off with the first bet of the night. On the second fight of the night at bantamweight, I have Blackshear to defeat the debuting Jose Johnson. This is a short notice fight. Blackshear was going to take on Brady Heastand. Heastand pulls out, and we have Jose Johnson, who was on the Contender Series a year ago, but has had some fights fall through. And he's a very big-framed bantamweight. Both of these guys are. The former CFFC champion, Blackshear, very good wrestler. Jose Johnson, a very dangerous Muay Thai striker. So a clash of styles here, and that's why I'm taking Blackshear. He's a guy who has very good wrestling offensively, a great back take, good submission potential as well, and he stays safe on the feet. He's never been finished inside the distance before. Jose Johnson, a guy who has struggled repeatedly in his career with the takedown defense. He finds himself in, fighting off submissions in several fights in his career, and he does have some ability to have like a dangerous guard off of his back. I've seen him, triangle fighters like Mo Miller before who are decent wrestlers and do well that way. But I mean, a guy as comprehensive as Blackshear, as long as Blackshear just goes to the wrestling early and often in rounds 1 and rounds 2, while Jose Johnson is the most dangerous, I think he goes on to win this fight either inside the distance by submission or gets the decision. The only part I worry about is if Blackshear, wears out down the stretch and tires out in round 3. Jose Johnson does have a pretty good gas tank, and he is freakishly dangerous. That guy's highlight reel is incredible with just flying knees, elbows against the cage, one-punch knockout power. The guy is a freak, but as long as Blackshear just avoids that big shot, I think he should dominate this fight with controlled time, and I think he does possibly have a good chance of getting a submission here. So taking 2 units on Blackshear at minus 200 for the first bet of the night. We move up a couple of fights in the prelims to a heavyweight fight. I do have 2 units as well at the same money line, minus 200 on Martin Buday as he defeats Josh Parisian this Saturday. I think that goes down either inside the distance or by decision. I don't really have a good eye for the overs and unders in this fight, but Josh Parisian, more of just like a brawling volume striker with not the best technique, not the best power. Although he does have a lot of finishes on his record, it's not against, a lot of UFC level competition, right? I mean, the guy has struggled even against low level UFC heavyweights. Martin Buday, a guy off the Contender Series last year, and 2 years ago at this point, and now he's finding himself 3-0 in the UFC. He defeated Chris Barnett, he defeated Lucas Brzeski by split decision. That was pretty sketchy, and the guy is coming off of a win over Jake Collier. So Martin Buday, more of a true heavyweight in this bout. They're both big guys, but Martin Buday, obviously a very big frame with some muscle underneath all of that insulation. And he's got some very good clinch weapons as well. Powerful punching at range, but against the cage, he can bully you, wear you down, vicious knees and punches up close. And on the regional scene, you saw him actually go for double leg takedowns off of that cage control. And he's very heavy on top, good control, and he does have some BJJ credentials as well. I believe it's a black belt. So we haven't really seen that in the UFC so far, but against Josh Parisian, that would be a very clear way to win this fight, right? Parisian's a guy who's been dominated in the wrestling against a couple of opponents. The most recent ones that come to mind are Dontel Mays and Jamal Pogues. So I just think Buday wins this fight, whether by a boring cage wrestling performance with the clinch work. He could probably win this at range. He's pretty durable, and I think he could do some wrestling and some groundwork as well. I'm not really too optimistic that happens, but even just the clinch wrestling in a boring fight, I think he wins. I don't see many ways for Parisian to win unless things go very poorly for Budai, but his style doesn't really, demand a lot of cardio, so I think he should be good to not gas out in this fight. It's even a pick-em price tag as far as the over-under 2.5 for this heavyweight fight. Obviously, by the looks of these two guys, and how big they are, I'd probably lean the under, but we've seen both these guys get stretched out in boring decisions. So, again, 2 units on Martin Budai at minus 200 on that one. Moving up a couple of fights. This one is more of a straight-up gamble on potential here. And this is a striker versus striker matchup mostly at middleweight up on the main card. Tafon Shokui versus AJ Dobson. I'm taking a shot at plus 120 for 1 unit on AJ Dobson, who trains out of the Ohio area at a BJJ gym. He also trains at Strong Style MMA with guys like Stipe. And he trains out of a very good strength and conditioning gym, a powerlifting gym called Westside Barbell that has done wonders. Even Matt Brown back in the day, who was kind of stalled in his career, he went to Westside Barbell, trained under the tutelage of the legendary Louis Simmons, rest in peace. And he went on to have like 5 straight stoppage victories and still has a promising career in the UFC. So a guy like AJ Dobson, far less proven than that, but he's around some pretty good competition, some good professionals, I should say, and he's got freakish power himself. You kind of compare him to like a bigger version of Jose Johnson if you watch the highlight reel, where he touches people with his fists and they pretty much go to sleep and have to get stretchered out of the arena. He's just fallen short in a couple of spots. He got out-wrestled by Jacob Malkoun. He got, just pretty much out-volume struck at distance in a very timid fight against Armin Petrosian last fall. So his back's against the wall here, AJ Dobson, and he really does need to put it all together here and take some chances, but I have a lot of faith in his athleticism, his speed, and his power early in the fight. Tafon Shokui, a guy who's been knocked out twice in a row now, Azamat Murzakanov, and knocked out by a jab at the hands of Carlos Ulberg. So some pretty good guys, and that was up at 205. Now when Shokui has to make this weight cut again, I don't think that's going to help his durability issues at all. And, I just don't think it's going to aid in much success here. He does have really good kickboxing credentials, does Shokui. He can be a pretty high output counter striker if need be, but he can also be low volume at times as well. So this fight could play out in a number of ways. I'm going to lean on AJ Dobson's potential. I just think he's got a lot more to prove, and we've seen Tafon Shokui in a lot of spots in the UFC. I'm not that impressed with this guy, and I think he's a little slow early. So hopefully this is a car crash, and we see AJ Dobson take advantage of Shokui early and get a stoppage victory. But AJ Dobson does have the ability to wrestle as well, so maybe we see some of that potential unlocked. But this is just a straight-up gamble with 1 unit here at plus money. Plus 120 on Dobson. I see plus 125 out there as well. And honestly, if you want to invest less than I am, half a unit, a quarter unit, and just play AJ Dobson inside the distance, I think that might be a viable way to play this as well. So moving on to the last money line. This is more of a cut and dry one at 205. Khalil Roundtree to defeat Chris Daukaus. This is Daukas's light heavyweight debut after losing 3 straight at heavyweight by knockout against some pretty good competition, though. Derek Lewis in round 1. Curtis Blades in early round 2, and also losing recently within like 30 seconds to Jairzinho Rosenstrike at the end of last year. So he kind of got bullied back down to, a weight class he probably should have been at all along, which is 205. At heavyweight, you saw he was pretty round around the midsection and kind of had a speed and mobility advantage over a lot of those guys at heavyweight, but he was a guy that was like kind of at the top of the lower half of the heavyweight division, defeating guys like Alexei Oleinik, Shamil Abdurakhimov, 2 very aged heavyweights, and also defeating Parker Porter. So not really impressive victories in his wins if you really break it down, but, you can kind of forgive his knockout streak I mentioned. Khalil Roundtree, very powerful Muay Thai. This guy kind of hits like a heavyweight at 205 when he's turned on. And, his combinations are just pretty hard to predict. Mixes in knees very well. When he starts flowing with his combinations, I mean, he's super accurate and precise with it. It's just sometimes he has those performances where it's like you expect him to knock out a guy like Marcin Prachnio, who's chinny, and he goes in there and kind of falls flat after round one if things don't go his way. Sometimes the rest of the fight follows suit and it falls apart. If he gets taken down and grappled, that's where guys have really bested him as well. Chris Daukaus does have BJJ skills, just never shows an intention to take the fight there. So obviously that is a danger in this fight, is Daukaus flipping the script, going down to a new weight class and wrestling first. But I think he gets pieced up against Khalil Roundtree. I mean, I have 2 units on Khalil Roundtree at minus 172 on BetOnline. You can get a better price than that even on the same sportsbook right now. But I also have the under 1.5 for 1 unit as well, and I got that at minus 170 on Bovada. Just because Chris Daukaus, I think most of this guy's fights, if not all, are under 1.5 rounds. He's got 10 knockouts out of 11 wins. What am I looking at here? No, I'm sorry. 10 knockouts out of 12 wins, 1 submission, and 1 decision. I'm pretty sure if you go back, at least in the UFC, all of these are under 1.5 rounds. A round 1 knockout over Porter, round 1 knockout over Nascimento, round 1 over Oleinik, and round 2, but still under 1.5 rounds over Shamil. And like I said, all of his last 3 knockout losses have all been under 1.5 rounds. So yeah, looking back at his previous record before the UFC, these are all under 1.5 rounds for the most part. So I think besides maybe one of them. So yeah, I mean, he's going to cause chaos. Could he catch Khalil Roundtree slipping early, just bum rush him with strikes and knock him out? That would catch the under 1.5, but more likely I think Roundtree pieces him up in round 1. And yeah, I mean, I don't have much faith in Daukaus making this weight cut successfully. I think Roundtree's pretty good. Just hopefully we get the right version of him on Saturday night. So just to recap, the 4 money lines: Damon Blackshear over Jose Johnson, Martin Budai over Josh Parisian, AJ Dobson over Tafon and Shokui as an underdog, and Khalil Roundtree to defeat Chris Daukaus. Like I said at the top, I have 2 props. I mentioned the one already, which is the under 1.5 at minus 170 between Roundtree and Daukaus. 1 unit there. The second prop I have, the final bet of this card I have, is another violent spot. This is the under 2.5 rounds in the Francis Marshall-Isaac Dulgarian fight at featherweight. At minus 130 for that prop, the under 2.5 rounds, I have 1 unit on that. I think the price is still around that price. Could be minus 150 on some books. I think maybe BetOnline. I got this on Bovada when it opened up at minus 130. And I think I have this under 2.5 covered in a couple of ways. Isaac Dulgarian, a very good wrestler. Francis Marshall, more of a generalist, but he's been in the UFC twice now, going 1-1. Dulgarian, very strong wrestler out of University of Nebraska, I believe. Strong career there. I think that was a D1 school. I'm not quite sure, but I've seen footage of this guy. Super fast and athletic. And so far, his amateur career, which started just a few years ago, all 4 amateur fights ended within the first round, either by ground and pound or submission. And his following 5 professional fights, all in the FAC promotion, have followed suit. They're all round 1 stoppages, either by ground and pound, which he's powerful, and he can knock people out cold with the ground and pound alone. But if they want to roll over to their stomach and give up their neck, he'll take the arm triangle or the rear naked choke. Super athletic guy. His striking obviously is basic and it's a work in progress. He goes to the wrestling early and often, so having that as his advantage, having that as his foundation style, I'm glad he has not fallen in love with his new boxing skills or something like that. Maybe that'll happen down the road of his career. That happens to a lot of wrestlers. But for now, the guy sticks to the wrestling, which I love. So at 27 years old, still going to be improving. Now at Factory X Muay Thai and still new to mixed martial arts. I think this guy's got a good shot of coming through as the underdog here. But either way, he's either going to steamroller Francis Marshall in round 1 and continue this hot streak he's been on, or I think he chases a finish early, gasses out in between rounds, and then I think Francis Marshall can take over and finish this fight with a striking advantage and experience advantage that he has in rounds 2 or rounds 3. So I think we see violence here one way or another. Again, I'm not jumping to conclusions that Dulgarian's going to gas out for sure after round 1. Just think it's a good possibility he'll be diminished if this fight does not end the way he's used to it ending in a debut spot. So those are all of the bets, the 4 money lines, the 2 violence props. Some recommended spots that I have in this card. There aren't that many, but I do like another under in this fight card. Either the fight doesn't start round 3 or the under 1.5 in the McGee Bays fight at bantamweight. I think that's a good spot there because both guys have a lot of finishes on their record. especially JP Bays. I think this guy is really round one submission or bust. So even looking at JP Bays, who's been on a 3-fight losing streak all by stoppage between flyweight and bantamweight, and McGee, who's got a 100% finish rate, I mean, that alone should spell that this could be a violent fight that doesn't see the later portions of it. But Bay's submission is at plus 500, and his round one submission on BetOnline right now is at plus 1,000. I think those are, likely outcomes if Bays does win this fight. We've seen McGee lose one time before, and that was by a round one submission. He got his back taken, and he got submitted shortly thereafter. JP Bays could do the exact same thing. He almost did it to Montel Jackson at this weight class. So, yeah, I think that's a good spot, potentially, if you want to play contrarian there. I do think that McGee wins this fight. I think he's just better at this point, more gritty and more dangerous on the feet. But either way, fight doesn't start round 3 or the under 1.5 in that fight. In the main event itself, I think it's a pretty binary fight. So, Rafael dos Anjos by decision at plus 220 I like, or Vicente Luque inside the distance at plus 165, which is on DraftKings. I like either of those depending on which side you're on. So the money line's obviously getting closer to a pick'em right now. I think minus 105 Luque, minus 115 RDA. I find myself on the RDA side as a prediction. I have no balls to bet that because I know that Luque is more towards his prime at 31, super dangerous in all rounds of the fight. And RDA, I know I'm not getting the best version of him. This guy was a champion several years ago at lightweight. He's now up a weight class in his older age, so I still think he's got the tools to get this done if I had to make a pick and look in my crystal ball at the winner of this fight. But I'm not going to pull the trigger on it. But as far as the prop goes, I think RDA, one of the best decision winners in the UFC's history. He's got the most cage time. Yeah, I think he has the most unanimous decision wins, and he's got probably the most decision wins at lightweight potentially there too if you check the records. Not 100% sure of that, but obviously this is one of the best minute winners in the UFC's history, and Luque is one of the best finishers at 170. So I think it goes one of those two ways. Luque inside the distance or RDA by decision, whichever way you find yourself on. You could take a piece of their money line for the majority of the bet, and then maybe, so if you think of it like 1 unit divided up, 0.75 units on their money line, 0.25 units on one of these methods. I think that would be a viable way to play this one. The last prop I like on this card, again, it's a fight we talked about earlier, but the Jose Johnson, Damon Blackshear, under 2.5 at minus 150. I think this could be a violent fight. The majority of their wins are by stoppage. Jose Johnson, just go watch this guy's highlight reel, man. It's like just brutal, freakish knockout power for the weight class, either 135 or 145. Damon Blackshear obviously has not been finished before, but there's no way if he dives for a takedown, catches a flying knee from Jose Johnson, eats some of those elbows against the cage and the clinch, he could get knocked out in this spot. So I think it is a Johnson by finish or it's a Damon Blackshear by submission in this fight, and I think it does finish under 2.5. I'm already on the Blackshear money line, so I'm not playing this violence prop, but I think it's a good way to cover both sides. So hit me in the comments with your best bets and favorite picks for this card. I would love to hear it. There's a lot of fights on this one where, you're looking at Josh Fremd at a minus 350 favorite price tag over Jamie Pickett. You're looking at, McGee over JP Bays. McGee's like a minus 400 favorite. It's just wild money lines on this card where I could see value even on the fighter I don't think is going to win. So I know there's going to be a lot of people just playing this from a value perspective this week. Love it. Don't hate it. But hit me with some of your favorite props and bets in the comments. I would love to see how you guys plan to make money. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. I will be back next week to cover the pay-per-view. Again, I'm going to be out of town all weekend, so it's going to be super busy getting out content like it has been the past couple of weeks. But I will be back on Thursday for my live stream that evening, probably at 9 p.m. Central Time. So if I don't talk to you guys until then, good luck in all of your betting action, and have a great weekend watching mixed martial arts. Cheers.